All right, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Welcome to the Digital Dish, our new show. My name is Cathy Hackle, and I'm joined by my amazing co-host Lisa Beyer, who's over here on one of the windows. I'm not sure which side, but anyway, guys, thank you so much for subscribing to our Blab, and we're very excited to be bringing this new show to Blab, where we're going to be talking about digital strategy, public relations, social PR, a little bit of everything that we're both very passionate about. So very excited. And yeah, Lisa, do you want to start by introducing yourself?
Sure. So if anybody doesn't know me already, I'm Lisa Beyer. I teach social media management at UF. So I see I have a lot of my students. Thank you so much for coming. I really was excited to have this opportunity where we can go live together and have Cathy on the call as well, and just explore this new platform, fairly new platform, just out in the past year and or less. And Cathy really is the specialist in live streaming, and she can tell you a little bit more about all of her live streaming endeavors. But so I'm the author of Social PR Secrets as well, and also do some social media and PR consulting, and love these platforms like Blab because we can do things like this, and we have a recording for later, and talk about on-the-spot topics. Like we're going to talk about social media strategies and social media strategies for tragedy and what's happening in the world. There's so many examples here we could talk about.
Yeah, definitely. And thank you so much. And this is an idea that we both kind of talked about at some point and then eventually materialized. It took a little while, but now we're here. And I'm just super pumped because Lisa knows how excited I am about live video. So I'm so glad that we're doing this. But my name is Cathy Hackle, and I know that a lot of folks here probably don't know me, because I see a lot of folks from your class. So my name is Cathy Hackle. I do several things. I'm the Hispanic marketing evangelist for Boom Social, which is owned by Kim Garst. So we're launching all her social selling products in Spanish for the Spanish-speaking market. So it's very excited. And if any of you guys know Kim Garst, she is fantastic, amazing woman. I mean, really, really, she's one of the top social media influencers in the country. So it's amazing to work with her. I also am the founder of Live Video Campus, and we're launching an event that's going to hopefully bring education on live video and virtual reality to brands and communicators. And we're launching our first event on August 8th at the Sony headquarters in San Diego. So we're very excited.
Or do we jump into the conversation? And when is it right to jump in?
Well, I think, I'd love to get more people jump in and then we can have conversations about this and have comments. I personally think, if it is something in your industry, if it's something that that your company feels strongly about, or it's something that impacts your industry, then maybe you should in some way react to it and offer, condolences or offer transparency or what have you. So yeah, let's have some folks jump in. I want us to eventually get to the point of how live video and platforms like this one are going to impact that, strategy for tragedy, because I'm seeing more and more the possibilities of how you're going to be able to use these amazing real-time platforms to help, in the PR perspective and in the digital perspective, manage a crisis.
Definitely. So should we bring, do you want to bring Jeff on? Do we want to invite him on?
I don't know if Jeff is still on.
Alyssa, do you want to come on? I see Alyssa from my class. How do you decide when to comment? So Christine is asking, how do you decide when to comment on social media about a tragedy as a business? Can it look bad for a company even if you are being empathetic? So that's a great question, and we're talking about that this week on, there's many opinions. So Jay Baer's opinion on that is that, a brand is not a person, and a brand cannot be empathetic. I personally don't 100% agree with that. I mean, I feel like we're saying that, okay, in social media, we're talking about, okay, if you're saying a brand isn't a person, then we're talking about being authentic. Well, how can you be authentic if there's not some personalization in there?
Yeah. Plus, anyone, even if the tweets are set up automatically, there's a human behind it. Normally there's a human behind it. So, so yeah, brand can't necessarily be a person, but there are people in this social media team working on it. So one example I'll give you, like Applebee's. I've done some work for Applebee's, and they always tweet from the Applebee's corporate handle. But they always do their initials. They'll say AR, or they'll put initials, and that, okay, those are someone's initials. I don't necessarily know who they are, but there's a human tweeting behind Applebee's that's reacting to my comment.
Mm-hmm.
So, right. So I think that that's one of the ways to kind of get around that part. So, but that's a great question. And I think a lot of brands struggle with it, especially if you're a more conservative brand. I think that you're going to struggle. If you're a brand, let's say like Red Bull, or, you know, one of those brands that has that personality, which has a brand voice and an amazing brand personality, it's probably going to be very different than a brand that's a lot more corporate, say like your utility company, the utility company in your neighborhood or something.
Right, exactly. And I think Christina's question, can it look bad for a company even if you're being empathetic? I mean, I think it all has to do with the synergies between the brand and the tragedy. And obviously, if it's something happening in your backyard or your community, how can you not acknowledge it? But if something is a stretch, like this example comes to mind when Robin Williams passed away, there was a PR agency that did something, a story that was something along the lines of 10 ways Robin Williams showed us how to prevent depression, or something of that sort. But it was newsjacking, you know, a tragedy and trying to game it for content. So that, to me, is a bad example.
And I think, you know, as much slack as maybe Coca-Cola or a company like that gets, you know, with the Flint, Michigan, you know, the water situation, that's a chance for a brand that has clean water to say, you know, we're sending a whole bunch of bottled water for these kids, you know, so that's one of the things where they're being empathetic, and they're also sending their product there because they realize that there is a need for that clean water. I mean, between that bottle of like brown whatever that was and a clean bottle of water, I mean, that's when one of the times, you know, I think a brand can show goodwill without necessarily trying to sell something.
Definitely.
And be empathetic about a situation that is it's getting worse and worse in our country. So
Definitely. So we have another question here from Kim. She's saying, are there any events that are so controversial that it would be best for nobody to make a comment via social media?
Ooh, Kim, that's a good one.
That is a good one. I mean, this sounds like such a blanket answer, but I think it really just depends on the brand and the event, because there are very controversial. I mean, if you ask Donald Trump, I mean, he's going to have, he'd pretty much comment on anything and doesn't think anything's too controversial and wants to make it even more controversial than it is. So I think it really depends on the goal too of what you're trying to achieve.
And I think the election is one of those parts. I mean, I have to be very honest. Like, I will sit down and watch a debate and I would want to tweet something, but I hold myself, I kind of pace myself and I say, okay, as a business person, how would this be, you know, as a personal brand, as a business person, how would this be viewed? So I have to tell you, I have auto-censored myself at times because I'm like, I don't want to create controversy around what I'm saying because I'm not the story.
Right.
So that's a great, great question. I think we're going to see a lot more of that, you know, with politics. I mean, I've seen so much back and forth in digital and social media when it comes to people being followed and unfollowed and hated on because of their political preferences. And it's really interesting to watch from that digital perspective. It's like, do you comment? Do you not comment? You know, and I don't know, is there ever a time when people shouldn't comment because it's so controversial? Maybe if it's something very radical, maybe if it's something like white supremacist. I mean, I don't even know, because then you have your right to
I mean, I think like something that could potentially cause harm, emotional, physical, or aggravate a situation even more. And to me, saying nothing, there's not going to be a consequence from saying nothing. Nobody knew what you were trying to say. So it might be better to keep it off social and keep it on. I mean, hello, there's still the live conversations that aren't going out in the public that everybody is going to have to comment on. We can have private conversations at a bar or at a home and it not have to go all on, not everything has to be posted on social.
Yeah. Maybe if it's a matter of real, national security, then maybe that's the time you should not comment on Twitter. But then you go into this whole, debate, which is a different story, which we're not going to go to. But what I'm
Right.
saying, is there ever a situation? Maybe. I think you have to kind of vet it. And then
Yeah.
from your business brand and your personal brand, you need to figure out what should I do? Does it matter if I comment on this?
Right, right, exactly. So
Mm-hmm.
we have here a question from Kyle: with athletes seemingly always finding themselves in the midst of controversy,
Mm,
I would not want to be a publicist for an athlete or a
no.
celebrity. Is it ever appropriate not to put out a generic apology?
Goodness gracious. I mean, that you get into the whole thing is like, does the publicist for the sport, for the actual athlete put out their, the response? Does the team, who really has to put out the response? That sort of thing. I mean, and I think we're all in some way, shape, or form tired of the generic, you
Hmm.
know, response. I know it has to go out because it's just, it's PR strategy, PR crisis communications 101. Something has to go out. But that is a good question. I mean, I would expect, an athlete to respond in some way, be it positive or negative.
Yeah,
Um,
I would say an acknowledgement is necessary.
yeah.
Just letting something go is probably not going to do you any good in situations where it's a huge controversy. It's going to snowball.
Especially because they are public figures. They have put themselves in that position as public figures. They're in the sport. They're role models, whether they like it or not. They're public figures. So
Hmm.
that's another thing. If you put yourself in that position, if you're a private citizen, that's a little bit different. But if you are that public figure, people are going to want you to respond.
Definitely, definitely. And so, what do you think, Cathy, about as far as going? Do we go dark when a tragedy happens? More like the tragedy of, let's say, Brussels
Mm-hmm.
or a community tragedy, and do we jump into the conversation? Do we stop promoted posts? I mean, so the best practices that I'm, sharing with my students are, like you said, have a policy in place. If you have promoted posts going, somebody has to be the human to say we have to stop these promoted
Mm-hmm.
posts, because it's very easy to be caught up in whatever's happening, and then 12 hours go by and you're the social media manager and you remember that there's promoted posts.
Mm-hmm.
So all of these things need to be thought out ahead of time. And the question about the apology, I mean, social media managers, publicists need to have these kind of scenarios that are role playing scenarios. What if you get into a controversy? What are we going to do? What are the steps? Almost like have these set up ahead of time, just almost like they have obituaries.
Yeah, I mean, we've got Peters Bernard here who said he's in Belgium, so I know our thoughts and prayers go out to the people of
Yes,
Belgium
yes.
for what the tragedy that has happened over there. So, is there, when do you go dark? I think that there is, in some way, shape, or form, a little time for silence um, that should be, respected. It doesn't mean that you have to go dark and be silent the whole day, but I think there has to be a little bit of silence. I don't. If something that major like Paris or Brussels or 9/11 is happening, there needs to be a little period of silence. And like you said, I think there needs to be someone always in charge of the posts that are scheduled, because you want to stop them. You want to make sure that they're not going out and it's not being seen as insensitive. I can't remember if it was Pepsi or who it was, but one of the brands had posts set up. And it was during the Aurora, Colorado shooting at a movie
Yeah.
theater, and they had posts set up because I can't remember which movie it was. It was one of the superhero movies, and they had, after the incident and after everyone was talking about it, they had posts going out about like, get your popcorn and your Pepsi at the theater and things like that. Obviously, these were scheduled posts, but it seemed so wrong at the time because it was like,
What are they thinking?
what are they thinking? No one wants to go to the movie theater at this moment because there has just been a shooting.
Right.
So I think that, like you said, there are, even though it's social media and some of it is automated, there are humans behind this. So there always needs to be a human being kind of like in charge, or someone that says, okay, I'm in charge when there's a crisis, or on this day I'm in charge of the crisis comm for our social.
Exactly, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, also, that's not to say we're not downplaying or saying anything bad against having promoted posts and automation.
Yeah.
There is definitely a huge advantage to having those. So the answer is not, oh, we can't do promoted posts because what if the tragedy happens? It's just we have to do promoted posts and we need to be prepared if there is some sort of a tragedy happen. So we have a question here from Alyssa. Sorry, go ahead, Cathy. Were you going to say
No, I was
something?
going to say that there folks are here talking about athletes and Maria
Oh,
Sharapova.
yeah.
And I agree with them. I think that, yeah, her coming out and saying, hey, I did take this, I did do this. She didn't think it was necessarily a bad thing at the moment. I think I agree with them. I think it mitigated some of the damage. And she's going to, it's a bad situation regardless.
Right.
She was going to have, obviously endorsements taken from her. But I think that her being honest and saying, yes, I did it, instead of a Lance Armstrong who denied it, and then actually came out worse at the other end. So
horrible. Yes, definitely. Anything else on the sports thing that we were talking about, or the athletes?
Yeah, it says here, question, why does being a public figure mean you have to be perfect? Athletes are always held to a standard that isn't realistic. They signed up to play a sport they love, not to be role models, and that comes from the general public. Good point. Good point. But if you are exposing yourself, and maybe in college, I think if you're in pro sports, I'm sorry, you're signing up for it. You're signing up for being a public figure. And, if they want to live their life in a way that is not how they should, all these leagues have standards which people need to abide to. They have a dress code. They have standards that people need to abide by. They have drug testing. There are certain rules that they have to abide by, even if they're not necessarily considering themselves a role model or a public figure. So, I think that I think we should hold them to a higher standard because of the role they're in. So.
Well, and especially if they know the standards they're being held to.
Yeah. Yeah. They know they have to wear certain clothes. They know they have they're tested for drugs. They know certain things. So
I just saw this question from Woodrow. In regards to promoted posts, to my understanding, they are more effective in reach, but I would assume that the consumer base would at some point be turned off by them. What are your thoughts? So if a brand is doing promoted posts the right way, and it's the content is what their audience is looking for, and it's of high quality, and it's a good match, it's educational, whatever the audience, profile is, if they're matching the right content to the right audience, they're not going to mind that they're promoted posts. I love my promoted posts that I see in my feed because they're matched to my interests. I get information about yoga. I get information about meditation, other than obviously the social media stuff that I get, but all of my interests, I want to know about them. So I want to know, even though they're promoted, I want to see them. And so if brands are doing it right, promoted posts should work.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I have nothing against promoted posts. I think that this day and age, especially in certain platforms, you have to.
No choice.
Promote a post. There's no choice. Organic reach can get you to a certain point, and that's it. So if you're trying to expand that digital reach, promoted post is the way to go. That being said, what I'm seeing with Facebook right now in live video is that they're pushing it and they're giving it to us kind of for free at this point, which is like exciting. I'm like, wow, we're getting this kind of for free at this point where, the live videos are showing up higher in the algorithm and they're giving it to us for free. Doesn't mean it's going to stay there for free and they're not going to monetize it pretty soon. But,
So Cathy, speaking of Facebook Live and live video, do you want to take this opportunity to transition into how we can use all of these live video platforms for strategies for tragedy?
I definitely see that there's an opportunity for crisis comms to happen on a digital platform. For example, yesterday, the Today Show announced that it set up a booth called the Facebook Live booth in the mini Instagram room. So they've got Instagram and they've got a Facebook Live booth. They're both paid for by Facebook, by the way, which is like Facebook doesn't pay for anything. They're actually paying to have these in there. So do you see this integration between social media and television kind of colliding even more?
Oh, yeah. Look at the Orange Room. I think the Today Show is like, they are the model TV show of integrating social. I loved when they did the Orange Room.
Exactly. So it's this huge integration. And I was thinking about it. They're doing it from an entertainment perspective, but if you think about it from a first responder crisis comm perspective and, having that strategy for tragedy, eventually we're going to see a lot more brands going live either on Facebook or on Periscope when there is a tragedy and telling people what's going on and saying, or giving their first statement that way, because it's, they'll have more digital reach, especially if they're a big brand and have a lot of people on Facebook. And yes, they are going to have a press conference. So why not use these other tools for that press conference? I talk about this platform Blab many years from now. I don't see it happening just yet, but many years from now, maybe having, the CEO, the mayor of the town, the fire chief, like having the first responders and some of the critical folks here sitting down and taking questions from the media.
I love that.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. I could see that happening. I mean, Google Hangouts doesn't make it as easy because this format with Blab is just perfect for that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that early adapters of Blab are smart, and we'll be able to use it as a communication tool before, once people are trying to catch up. And that's what happened with Facebook. Brands that kind of sat on the sidelines with Facebook and waited until, let's say, the last 2 years to try to catch on. It's hard. Facebook is very hard. And if you weren't kind of going with it from the beginning, it's so hard to catch up. And you can't even, the value of just being an early adapter on things like Blab or even Snapchat.
Yeah, and I know you and I are like completely in love with Snapchat at this point.
Yes, yeah.
I love it. I think it's fantastic platform.
And one of my regrets though with Snapchat is that I was not as early an adapter as I was. Like I was first on Twitter, first on Facebook, first on YouTube, first on Google+. I mean, everything I was on the first day. Snapchat I signed up with early, but I didn't really get active until the past year. And I know the feeling of playing catch up. It's annoying.
Yeah, for me, it's been interesting because I was first on Periscope, and live video has really been the platform where I've kind of risen, where my influence has increased. And now I've kind of moved into Snapchat, and I see kind of a big relationship there because of the video, the fact that you're able to communicate via video, even more now with the update, which is fantastic. But yeah, I see basically what I'm getting at is the students that are in here, think about live video as another tool in your PR toolbox. And for PR people, this is hard because you're thinking about it's live video. Sometimes you can't control the message, et cetera. Anything can happen. But it really is, if you think about it, it really is another tool in your toolkit. So don't disregard it. And if you're going into the workforce, try to learn these platforms, because I have done this. I have just for research and articles that I've written, I've gone into Indeed.com and put in Periscope or put in Snapchat and looked at major markets like New York and Los Angeles and see, okay, are they asking for this knowledge? And yes, they are. They really are asking for this knowledge. So if you know video, if you're starting to understand how digital video, mobile video is working and it's impacting communications, you will have a much stronger opportunity.
Cathy, I could not have said that better. That is like underline, highlight what you just said. And I think the key, what you said too, is that the problem with public relations professionals, and hopefully not this generation that's watching and from my class, but is that you're trying to be perfect. You're working it, editing it, making it perfect. And then by the time it's done, everybody else is ahead, or it's old news and things get just put aside. So just go for it. And there are risks, but it's worth the risk to do this.
Yeah. So
what about Periscope, Cathy? Tell us a little bit more, some examples of using Periscope for PR. And in crisis situation.
In crisis, definitely. I mean, I talk about this in my presentations because I had to deal with a PR crisis on Periscope when I was putting together New York Scope Week, and we had a whole debacle with Twitter, and it was just dramatic. And we had to face a lot of criticism on Periscope. People doing scopes. I mean, you can't stop someone from talking about your brand. You really can't stop them. They're doing it in live video and they have 100 people in there. You're just like, okay. But, I think they're very useful platforms. I've seen a lot of press conferences and I think that's great, but I think it's really engagement where you're able to use it. I'll give you an example. I think, the Syrian refugee crisis, Periscope has been an amazing tool for showing the human side of this tragedy. Because whether you like it or not, whether you like refugees or not, they're human beings. So it has shown, there's several journalists that have used Periscope on the front lines and have shown people doing, traveling from Syria into Europe and what they really go through, and interview them. I remember very, very, very well an interview they did with one of the folks, and the guy's wearing these glasses that look very expensive, and he's got an iPhone. And the journalist that was interviewing him said, well, it looks like you're wearing Gucci glasses and you have an iPhone. And the guy's like, these glasses were €2. They're obviously fake. And this phone is my lifeline. If I didn't have this phone, I would die at sea, all these other things. I would have no way to communicate with my family, or my family know where I am. So, and this all unfolded on Periscope real time in real life and raw. Mm-hmm. And I was like, wow. So, when you think about that, amazing use of these tools for social good, it does have an impact.
And bringing the whole journalism side into the communications part and the social media part of public relations, I think that's the awesome part, is that you can be the journalist yourself from inside the brand, mm-hmm. or the on-site journalism. So we're pretty much at our half hour. We can take a couple more questions. I think being mindful of everyone's time and appreciating it is, this is exciting for our first lab that we have this interaction. So Cathy, what do you think? You want to take a couple more questions?
Yeah, why don't have people jump in? I think it's cool to have actual, human beings.
Definitely. Who wants to jump in?
The digital dish. Come into the dish.
Let me see if I can bring somebody in, and hopefully they'll accept. Robert, let's see if he's still on.
Yeah, guys. And by the way, if you want to share, feel free. If you go to share last 30 seconds or share this out, it'll tweet it out from your accounts. It'll tweet it, it'll send it out through your Facebook too.
Here we go.
So feel free to share.
Have to get that lighting in there.
Hey, Robert.
By the way, hello. I definitely learned some great key things. Definitely taking into account the situation and where your brand stands, especially on stuff like political issues, is super sketchy. By the way, Miss Byer, props to you for being one of the first people on the internet I've ever heard talk about Donald Trump and have it not be something that.
Oh God.
not defending the guy, but every time I'm on social media, that's all you see. So, I mean, props to you. Excellent job.
Thank you.
She's a great PR person.
Yeah.
I'm the same way, Cathy. I don't really comment on anything that might be controversial, and I'm like, okay. But I mean, I still want to give my opinions, but thank you for that. So what are your thoughts on some of these other strategies for tragedy? What do you see that brands are doing right or wrong, Robert?
I like with the personality thing that you were bringing up. I definitely feel like successful brands, they're all personable, and what they do is, since they are very personable, is they look at those sorts of crises as kind of like a person. They look at it and say, okay, well, I got to relate, because if, again, you don't want to be standing off on your own and have your own blank robotic opinion while everybody else is like, this is horrible, this just happened, why is no one being empathetic about this? Because I mean, that's what's cool about humans, is that we all like to try lifting each other up, and I know that not a lot of people really believe that we like to be like that, but we do. We pick each other back up and we keep going, even if we keep failing or whatever the case may be. So
definitely. Yeah. When do you graduate, Robert?
Oh, well, I recently transferred here. I lost some credits, so okay. I have about 2 years. But I've been loving this campus. Seriously, UF's a beautiful place. So
we agree.
It is a good place.
Yeah.
And what do you think, Robert, since you are in that, college sports kind of world? I mean, you go to the games, I'm sure, and you're into it at some point, but what do you think about holding, we're talking about crisis calm when it comes to athletes. What do you think about that? Because I know there was an interesting conversation going on in the sidelines.
I mean, it's like with the whole Marshawn Lynch thing, how he didn't want to have interviews before the Super Bowl and how he was getting fined for not doing them. It is sadly kind of part of the job. I know that over Christmas break, I was up in New England and I went to a Patriots game, and there was almost no one who wasn't wearing a jersey that had the name of a football player on the back of it, especially like big names. I feel like that's honestly just, it's part of the job. When you sign that contract, you're kind of asking to, be in the spotlight, to be looked at from a certain light, whether you want to or not. And if it really does bother you, the best you can do is just stay neutral about it and not give the press something to feed off of. Just strictly keep anything that they ask you mainly to whatever game you play. I feel would probably be the best way to approach that.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. I see Christy here from Bruce Clay Inc. They specialize in SEO. And so I was going to invite her on just to get her perspective on when there is a social media and the strategy for a tragedy, how it can impact search results when mistakes are made and what to think of. So Robert, I'm going to sign off now on you.
All right. I have to actually.
Oh wait. Here's Christy. You can stay on. She's coming on. Hey, Christy. We can't hear you yet.
I hear you.
Can you hear us? We can't hear you. Oh.
We can't hear you.
Actually, I do have to head off to class.
Okay, go ahead.
But I'll see you all later. Thank you for having me on. I feel so
Thanks,
well.
Robert.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Oh, no, I can't hear her.
Can't hear you. But we still love you.
Have her jump in and out.
Jump in and out. Jump. Here, I'm going to. Okay.
I definitely want to hear what you have to say when it comes to SEO. I think that is a great question. So we've got one person calling. Is that from your class?
I can't tell. For some reason, when they're calling in, like there's not the button for me to accept it, like there usually is. I have to go make them the co-host. Can you do the same? Do you see it, Cathy, too? Can you accept the call?
Yeah, but I don't know that. I don't really know who this person is. So,
What happened?
Okay, no, hold on. Oh, no, my screen froze for like a second.
Let's see if Christy can come back on.
There's Blab. Thank you guys for being in here.
Yay.
Love you guys. That's Brittany.
Oops, what did I just do? Oh, here she comes. Christy, we can't hear you. Unplug, yes. Okay. No sound. No sound. I know. Let's see.
Make sure output, check system preferences, make sure the output is set to headphones. When you call in, you can choose to correct the mic in the pop-up. Let's see, I'm sure she'll figure it out.
Christy, if you can hear us, look in the messages from, okay, you're doing that, okay. Where are system preferences? Your computer system preferences.
You're on Mac?
Are you on a Mac? She got them.
Yeah, because I do want to hear what she's going to say. It's very interesting. What happens with your
Christy?
Your song?
Christy and Virginia. No, go ahead, Christy. I'm just going to talk a little bit about you. Christy and Virginia from Bruce Clay Inc. were our guests a couple weeks ago when we were talking about SEO and optimizing content for social and also for search. One second. Okay. She's coming back on.
Mm-hmm.
So we should talk about next week. We're going to be on next week, Thursday at 12 o'clock. We're going to try to do every Thursday at 12, unless there's something that comes up that we can't for whatever reason. And next week, we're going to be talking about social media and mobile and all the great things that are happening from that end, from Instagram, Snapchat, live streaming, all the different mobile aspects of social media.
And I don't know, so if you saw the news, but CNN has fired up a big amount of people, but they're also pumping $20 million into CNN to focus on mobile video.
Wow.
And digital expansion. So, I think that they're starting to realize that they need to get in the game seriously.
Right.
So that's a great opportunity for content creators in the digital mobile space. So let's see, Christy, are you?
Yay!
Yay!
So what I did was I went on Chrome instead, which I think is one of the things we're supposed to do.
Yeah.
Okay, so sorry. Hello.
Hi. Thanks so much for being on the spot and joining like this. But
I just wanted to watch.
Oh, good. Well, we'd love your perspective on how tragedy that happens and how brands handle it in social, how that can impact SEO and search results.
Okay. Well, from an SEO perspective, what we'd always recommend is that I don't know if you guys talked about this yet, but if you own the SERP, like the search engine results page, before tragedy strikes, then you're ahead of the game. So when that sensational, crazy result happens, you have like 9 other things, and then that's going to, over time, get off the first page. So you should be already ready for something like that. Did you guys talk about that?
We didn't. We haven't even talked at all about the search aspect of when a mishap happens, whether it has to do with the brand reacting maybe a little bit too quickly off the cuff when a disaster happens, and then or just not paying attention. For example, the Joan Rivers, I don't know if you heard that when Joan Rivers passed away, she was had signed a deal with Apple to promote the new iPhone. And after she had passed away, coming from her Twitter handle, she was talking about the new iPhone. So her social media people were probably just so upset about her dying that they didn't realize that this had that she was still tweeting as if she was still alive. So mishaps like that, and all of a sudden your search results now are crippled because you're being talked about in the media for your mistakes.
That's a really good example of a faux pas.
Thanks to Melissa Fack, SEO aware.
Yeah.
So what are some other things that brands could do to be proactive to protect their search results when it comes to tragedies or getting involved in social media mishaps that could turn into their own tragedy?
Well, I think, there's 2 things. I think first you said it, to just be aware and to be watching what's happening. So that means having Google Alerts set up for your brand name and for people at your brand that are notable, and just knowing what people are saying on Google and in articles, and then being on TweetDeck and having columns set up so you can constantly be seeing, and you don't have to do any work. It's populating right there. And then if you're some huge brand like Coca-Cola, where we're talking about 100,000 mentions, who knows, per day, right? So you can't be doing it manually. Then if you have a really robust tool I don't know, any of these $500 a month tools where algorithmically, there's a tool called Nuvi Okay, so algorithmically they can tell you if what percentage of your mentions are negative or positive. So all of a sudden there's a bunch of negative mentions and it's, midnight, you can set it up so your brand manager gets a text message saying oh my God, 5 million people have said something bad about you, and then you need to go look at it. So you have to be smart.
Awesome. Okay. Well, Chrissy, I'm so glad you were able to join at the last couple of minutes. I think that we're going to call it a wrap, unless, Cathy, is there anything else that you can think of we want to add?
No, I just want to thank everyone that jumped in here. Chrissy, thank you so much for jumping in here. And I'm just excited that this is their first digital dish is over. Yeah.
And everybody tweet it out. And if we didn't answer any of your questions, we'll try to see how we can do a better job at it next time, or maybe just answer them offline. So great. Have a great rest of the afternoon, everybody.
Bye, guys.
Thank you. Bye.